Good day. Welcome to Agenda. Sitting in for Cito Beltran, I'm Regina Lay. We are One News, all sides, all the time. All right, let's get started with our starter quote for this morning, and it's coming from author John Maxwell, who says, "As leaders, we must stop wishing and start working." Wise words to start the day, indeed. Now, let's take a look at the front page of the Philippine Star. It says the Philippines is 5 to 6 years behind when it comes to learning competencies, says the Department of Education. This as the country once again finished in the bottom 10 of the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA. We'll discuss more of that here on the program in just a few moments. Now, after last weekend's bombing at Mindanao State University that left four dead, the country's security officials assured senators that the Philippines is in safe hands. Senate President Mig Zubiri echoed these pronouncements of police and military after holding a security briefing with the intelligence agencies alongside Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro. The agencies are now looking at several persons of interest, but Zubiri refused to elaborate pending further investigation. Still on peace, presidential peace advisor Carlito Galvez Jr. said before Congress that despite the amnesty proclamation issued by President Bongbong Marcos, that the government will not just hand out blanket amnesty to former rebels. Galvez said rebels who would avail of the offered amnesty would still have to face civil liabilities for crimes committed against civilians. And the health department has recorded in the country 4 confirmed cases of walking pneumonia. The agency, however, underscored that the illness is not driven by a new pathogen, saying that it has been previously detected in local cases. Health experts are again urging the public to wear masks in crowded areas to be protected from these diseases. Again, the Philippines once again finds itself at the bottom of the rankings in the PISA assessment in the subjects of reading, mathematics, and science. One lawmaker is sounding the alarm, another is seeking to intensify the government's response, while a member of the academe doesn't seem surprised. Let's watch this video.
Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel says it is very alarming to see that the Philippines has shown no improvement in the last program for International Student Assessment, or PISA. Among 81 countries, the Philippines ranked 6th to the last in reading and mathematics, and 3rd worst in science. The assessment was done with 15-year-old learners conducted by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD. The country scored less than the OECD average in all 3 subjects. The average 2022 results were about the same as in 2018 in mathematics, reading, and science. Pimentel stressed that the Department of Education should act swiftly to adjust the current curriculum. His colleague, Senate Committee on Basic Education Chairman Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, wants the Education Department to intensify its learning recovery program. He is also proposing a budget of 10 billion pesos to address academic recovery brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. For ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro, the PISA results is a solid indicator that the Department of Education should be led by a real educator. Meanwhile, UST Elementary Education Department Assistant Professor Eleanor Barhami Hesari believes that the Philippines has been experiencing an education crisis for decades and not only in the past 10 years. So how will the Marcos Jr. administration address this long-standing problem? Let's find out in today's Agenda.
Big questions indeed. And this morning, we are happy to have with us ASEC Francis Bringas, who's Deputy Spokesperson for the Department of Education. ASEC Bringas, thanks for being with us.
Hello, good morning, Regina. Good morning to all your viewers and listeners.
There's so much to unpack here, but let's start with your overall assessment of how the country did with PISA. You heard our report just now.
We had the PISA presentation of the results yesterday at the Department of Education, at the central office,
Mm,
and we are acknowledging really that the results were not good for the Philippines because we still have we did not statistically improve our
mm,
standing in reading, science, and mathematics, and we have expected this result as well. We have been telling that we are not going to expect very good results given that the PISA examinations were given during the pandemic. So that is not, of course, finding like giving an alibi about our result,
mm,
but
mm.
it is a similar result in the pre-pandemic PISA that we had in 2018. So we are doing our best with the Learning Recovery Program to address these concerns as presented during the 2018 and now the 2022 PISA results.
And in fact, I understand that the country only joined the PISA rankings in 2018. So this is just the second year we're getting the study for,
Yes, it
correct?
is.
Mm,
Right. It is a very wise decision actually for the department to be joining to have joined the 2018 PISA because it will give us a fair assessment of how our education system is really going. No,
mm,
and we found
mm.
out really a complete picture of how our education system is working, and we have been addressing these concerns since we had the results in 2018.
So even though the results weren't uh, good, they were not what we had been hoping for. There is no plan to pull out of the international ranking. And I asked this because I remember in 2018 when the results first came out, then Secretary Leonor Briones was let's just say offended by the results, and she called it outdated data. Right. So looking forward, there is no plan to pull the country out of the PISA rankings despite
Well,
this
our yes, our
dismal result.
participate. Yeah, Regina, our participation in international large-scale assessments like the PISA is going to be a regular
Mm,
engagement of the department because we believe that third-party assessment like this completes the picture that we do in the Philippines. For example, our in-house assessment in the department and the other third-party assessment agencies or organizations in the country, and they all point to the same conclusions. And we would be wanting the participation in large scale assessments like this to be a major part of our assessment process in the department.
that is very good to hear, indeed. So let's get down to brass tacks. Average 2022 results were about the same as in 2018, as we pointed out in the critical areas of math, reading, and science. And also for me personally, as a parent as well, what's most alarming is that they said that almost no students in the Philippines were top performers in mathematics, meaning the students couldn't model complex situations mathematically and they couldn't select, compare, and evaluate, problem solving strategies. And that to me is quite worrying because we live in a hyper digital age, right? So I'm a
Right.
journalist. I make a living with words, but even then, I recognize the vitality of understanding mathematics in our very digital future. And so, what kind of conversations have you guys had in DepEd to if not fix the problem immediately, because I know this is a long term issue. It will take a long while before any gains can be realized. But what sort of remedies do you think we can do in the meantime to fill these gaps?
Well, yeah, Regina, we recognize this problem already in the past. Now that's why
Mm,
the revision or the launching of the Matatag curriculum,
matatag,
the
yeah.
revised K-10 is really focused on
Yeah.
applications of learnings in real life situations. That's focused on 21st century learning skills and lifelong learning. Because in the PISA, if you notice that PISA examinations are actually applications of learnings of
Mm.
all the years that the children, the 15-year-olds spent in school and how they apply this to real life situations. So we are focusing also the Matatag curriculum into such learnings and lifelong or long-term results of learning that they get in the schools.
How soon do you think before we can start to see before we can start to reap the benefits of that? Of course, I mean, Education Secretary Sara Duterte has only been in position for a little over a year and a half, right? So it's still early
Right.
days. But
Yeah.
how soon do you think? when you look at the runway, what are you guys planning for?
Well, definitely it's not going to be overnight, Regina. This year, this school year only, we are piloting our curriculum in kinder grades 1, 4, and 7. That's a pilot study.
Mm.
And then by next school year, we will roll this out nationwide. And then on a staggered basis, we will be completing the offering of the K-10 revised curriculum by 2028. So hopefully, our graduates for the newly revised curriculum would be after 2028. So it's going to be a slow progress, but we're looking at the national learning recovery efforts. Given the different reading, mathematics, and science programs that we have embedded in the National Recovery Program to be facilitating our efforts towards achieving a better result.
Oh, so you think you might adjust again in 2028? Is that correct?
Oh well, not necessarily, but we will be looking at a
Oh, okay.
progress of
Okay.
our results based
Mm.
on the assessment that we have with the latest with the PISA.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna try all this. So you're rolling out the program already this year, and then you're gonna assess that and see what kind of adjustments need to be made, and any adjustments or improvements
Yes.
will have to come in 2028. Correct?
Right, right,
Okay.
Regina, right, Regina, and that is the curriculum side alone. But in the study of the PISA, there are several other factors, socioeconomic factors, that need to be addressed,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
the learning support programs that we have in the department will also be facilitating factors for achieving a better result.
Asa, talk to us about these social-economic factors, because of course, in the PISA rankings as well, we're being compared to Asian countries that are much wealthier,
Mm-hmm.
that have a lot more resources, right? The names that keep popping up are Singapore, Korea, Japan, and of course, different economic issues, right? So talk to us about these socioeconomic issues on the ground and how they're affecting the learning poverty.
Yeah, for one, that was mentioned in the PISA results based on the study. We also have around 12%, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, of our learners that took the exam mentioned that they come to school feeling hungry. That
Hmm.
is why we are looking at our school-based feeding program as a very effective program. In the past, we have proven that our school feeding program is very effective in keeping our schools or our children in schools, because this is to address our school leavers, our dropouts, and those who are not coming to school, which is also shown in the PISA that there are really learners who claimed or who mentioned that they skip schools at least once in a week, and then others would leave school for almost 3 months. So these programs that we have, apart from the others, would be very helpful in keeping up with the socioeconomic factors that would be affecting the learning of our learners.
How large is this school feeding program? It's the SBFP, right? School based feeding
Yes,
program.
right.
How large is it? How many students does it cater to? How many regions?
Well, it is a nationwide program. It caters to all regions and all learners that are classified to be undernourished, or we call them wasted or severely wasted, and they are part of the feeding program. In fact, last year we have more than 3 million, I believe, or more than that, who have been recipients of the school based feeding program. And we are glad that this year the Congress as well as the Senate have approved. In principle, I believe the increase of our budget for the school-based feeding program, so that we will be feeding our recipients not only for 120 days, but it will be up to the whole entire school year of 220 days.
Oh, so at the moment it's only for 120 days. It covers students for
Yes,
120 days throughout the school academic year.
yes, right, right. That
Okay.
is right. But for our budget for next year, it will be up to the complete number of school days for a school year.
I'm seeing that in 2022, I think the allocated budget was 82 million. Is that correct? For the
No,
school.
it's no, it's more than that. Because
Mm.
it covers 120 feeding days for millions of learners. So, and it covers like grades 1. Our feeding program for this year will cover kinder up to grade 6.
K to six, yeah. And I'm asking about the budget because I saw that the Commission on Audit had flagged the DepEd in 2022 over what they called lapses and delayed implementation of the school-based feeding program. Uh, they said that there were delays, for instance, in Oriental Mindoro, if some schools received milk only a month late from when it was supposed to start. So I'm wondering, is the budget the issue here, or what else is the problem?
Well, the problem is really on the procurement issues, because
Mm,
the school-based feeding program fund is downloaded to the schools because
mm,
they prepare their own menus, they prepare their own cycle menus, and they do the procurement at their level. So sometimes the required menu cycle would not be available in those areas, and they need to procure them elsewhere. And the milk component as well, we have issues with that. But presently, we have already revised our guidelines for the implementation of the school-based feeding program so that it will be more effective and more efficient at the level of the schools.
Oh, I see. So it's more a problem of logistics, and again,
Yeah.
because we're a archipelago, sometimes some of the food items or the resources that's needed in the provinces be accessible. So it's more a problem of that than the budget problem.
Yes, that is right, Regina.
Um, so this year, if I understood it correctly, the budget is over 100 million.
Yeah, I think it's in the billions level.
Okay.
I'm not pretty sure, but I'm trying. I
Okay.
will provide you the
That's
data
okay.
later on.
We'll
Yeah.
we'll circle back to that later.
Yeah.
And the goal is again to cover 120 days with the option. Hopefully, at some point we can increase that to more than 200 days, covering nationwide learners, K to six. Correct.
Yes, that is right.
Okay. So
That's for
that should.
200 days. Yeah.
Um, do you see that we will be able to continue that program not just next year but in the coming years? Because again, education gains improvements in education, they take a while to realize.
Yeah, I think both houses in the Congress are in agreement with this goal of the
Mm.
department, and we are hoping that this funding will continue, and hopefully it will be expanded further, not only to wasted or severely wasted learners, but universal. That would be ideal for us.
Okay, that's that's very good news indeed. But right now we do have to pause for a commercial break. I apologize, ASIC bring us. We will return to our conversation just after this very quick break. Please stay with us. This is a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
You are still watching Agenda here on One News, all sides, all the time. I'm Regina Lay, sitting in for Cito Beltran. Before the break, we were speaking with DepEd Assistant Secretary Francis Bringas about the latest PISA 2022 rankings. Let's continue on. Let me just bring in ASIC Bringas back in. Uh, ASIC, I understand the department also has a program called Catch Up Fridays. Tell us more about that.
Well, yeah, that's the catch up Friday. So it's actually a day, the Friday, that is dedicated to reading and numeracy programs. So it's going to be implemented nationwide again in all our schools. We are just finalizing our policy guidelines in relation to the catch-up Fridays, but we are looking at this as a bold effort to really inculcate in the among our learners the love for reading and our increasing our skills, reading skills and numeracy skills among all our learners. It's not going to be like isolated groups of learners that will be participating, but it will be universal in all our schools.
When you say all our schools, that's all public and private schools, or just the public schools?
Oh, we are looking at the public schools, but we are highly encouraging our private schools to participate or to join in such program.
Okay, so Fridays are about reading. It's about
Yes,
inculcating a love of reading.
yes, it
Okay.
is, and because we know that everything starts. I mean, learning in the school starts with how well a child is able to read and comprehend what he is reading.
Indeed. And then also for those who are not aware, what is the second Congressional Commission on Education, or what they call EDCOM 2? What is that about?
Well, the EDCOM 2 is, of course, chaired by Senator Gatchalian, and
Mm.
it is an interagency and membership not in Jan. We have the DepEd that's participating as a member, and they are looking into how they can help improve the education system in the Philippines. So it's actually a commission or committee that looks into ways by which we can have a revision or a something like a reinventing our education so that we are able to address the concerns and the demands of the current times.
And when is it happening?
Well, it's been going on. The meetings and the conferences of the EDCOM is currently ongoing. It has been like a continuous exercise that they have, and they tackle all issues regarding education. And the DepEd has always been invited and to be part of such conversations.
So it's an ongoing
Yeah,
hearing, basically, or not hearing, but ongoing program. I
right.
wonder if there's so we have the lawmakers, and then you have participation from DepEd. I wonder if we have representation from the teachers as well, especially, right, and also from the parents.
Yes, we do. It's actually multi-sectoral in nature, so we are
Mm.
looking at all perspectives. That is why the EDCOM is composed in such manner so that we get all the sides, all the perspective from the different sectors of the site.
Okay. Um, Asik, bring us the last time I spoke to spokesperson and Secretary Michael Poa. One of the things we delved on was the understaffing problem of teachers, right? He said that the Department of Education is well aware of the problem. You're working to alleviate it, but of course, it's difficult because it's about finding more capable teachers. It's about upskilling them. It's about providing a lot of the resources, right? So it takes time and a lot of money. That was I believe I last spoke to him earlier this year, and I was wondering if there's been progress in terms of remedying the understaffing problem, especially in the
Well, we
provinces.
Yeah, well, we do receive an annual allocation of around 10,000 teachers per year, and it's been an allocation given by Congress for several years now, and we are looking at further increasing this allocation in the coming years so that we will be able to address the lack of teachers or shortage of teachers that we have been experiencing in all our schools. But given the limited number of teachers that we are given every year, we are actually looking at the new curriculum, which has a reduced number of learning areas uh, that would also redound as well to lesser load for teachers that would allow them to get more classes to complete their required 6 hour teaching load. But even given that, we still have a shortage of teachers, and that is why to relieve teachers from this difficulties in handling classes, we are also into the effort of providing non-teaching positions for all our schools so that these non-teaching items would be the ones that will take care of the administrative tasks of teachers.
The 10,000 allocation that you received every year from Congress, 10,000 teachers every year, is that enough?
No, definitely not, because we have been like on record, we have around 80,000 shortage of teachers so far. That is considering that we have the ideal number of learners per class, but that is the average nationwide. We are looking at uh, if we look at it in a micro level, we'll be looking at some schools with excess and some schools with shortages, and we are looking into equitably distributing this staff so that we will alleviate the problem with the
Mm.
number of teachers that we have.
And then there have been efforts over the years to try to increase the wages, of course, to try to attract more teachers, um, to fill the vacant teaching spots. But it doesn't seem like there's been it's moving fast enough. There's been good momentum. There's been good traction, right? So as you said, there's still a big shortage of teachers. Well, on the other hand, the department is trying to adjust the wages as well. Why do you think? Why are they not uh, biting? What seems to be the
Well,
problem?
we have several bills filed by our congressmen and women in Congress for the increase of salaries for public school teachers, and we have been actively engaging in the deliberations of the bills. But we have just completed the fifth tranche of the standardization, salary standardization. But we are looking at the support, because the department's position has always been to support bills that would increase the salaries for public school teachers, and hopefully it will gain traction in Congress so that
Mm.
we will also be the career in teaching would be more attractive to future college graduates.
Are we still losing a lot of teachers overseas? Are we still losing a lot of talent to
Uh,
foreign employees?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes, we have the exchange visitors program that has been very well received by so many public school teachers, and we have been experiencing exodus. Well, not really an exodus, but we have a big number of teachers that are really looking into finding greener pasture abroad through the exchange visitors program. And we are also looking into this policy that we have so that we will not be losing the good teachers to other countries. And one way, of course, is to make their stay in the department in the public schools more encouraging and more attractive.
So it's been hard to counter yung the exodus pa rin,
Yeah, it
of teachers
is.
overseas.
I know. Yeah, it is because it's very difficult. Kasi alam mo, pag sinabi nila it's for greener pasture, then
Of
we can't do
course.
anything about that. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, of course. I mean, how could you
But
argue with that? They also have families to raise,
yeah,
right?
but we do have many cases where after the contract, these teachers who availed of this exchange visitors program would come back to the Philippines and reapply with the department. We do have cases of those.
Oh wow, that's very good to hear. What
Yeah,
brings them
right.
back?
Well, apparently the contract under this program would just be 3 years and renewable for another 3 years. But before they
Mm.
can do that, they need to come back to the home country for at least 2 years before they can apply again. So they are reapplying really back to the department when they come after the expiration of the contracts.
Oh, that's very good to hear. We're running out of time, but I wanted to get two last things in. Asset bring us. Earlier in the year, DepEd Secretary Sara Duterte had imposed this no poster policy, and I wonder if there's been an update on that.
Well, that's still a policy that is in effect.
Mm.
So
Okay.
it is it's policy direction that's been taken by the department, and we are getting positive feedback from the field, and we hope that this will continue to be a good program or policy for the department. And of course, we are not we are still open to some adjustments if ever there's going to be, particularly in the lower grade levels where
Okay.
visual learning is also very effective.
Yes, that's it. Visual learning aids. That's the correct term for it. I was like posters. I mean, what is there's the basically the policy is no posters. Classroom walls must be bare, no posters on the walls. And so you've basically had good feedback on it from the ground.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Okay.
We do have the good feedback on bare policy, bare walls policy, and yeah, that's a fair assessment, really.
Okay. Okay. And then lastly, ASEC, what are the DepEd's priorities going to be moving forward, particularly now that we have again the very detailed and very insightful assessment from PISA moving forward? What are the things? Of course, we're at the end of the year already, and we keep repeating that education gains, any improvements that you make will take a long while before you start realizing benefits. But in the meantime, what do you think the department is going to be focusing on?
We will be focusing on the National Learning Recovery Program. This is the main focus of the department. We have started doing the recovery efforts of the department. Under this program, we have the National Reading Program, National Mathematics Program, National Science Program, and we have the National Learning Camps. So put all together under the National Recovery Program, which we will be focusing in the next few years, we are hopeful that we will have a good progress in the next few years.
Certainly, your plate is very full. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Deputy DepEd Deputy Spokesperson ASEC Francis Bringas.
Thank you so much, Regina.
Thanks for your time. Okay, we will pause for another quick break. Agenda will return just after this. Stay with us. More to talk about up ahead. Keep it here on One News.
Following the results of the 2022 Program for International Student Assessment or PISA, the question now is, what does the government plan to do about this? For one, the Commission on Higher Education or CHED vowed to implement measures aimed at improving Filipino students' performance in international assessments. In a statement, CHED pledged to expand its panel for teacher education to see to it that universities and colleges are foolproof when it comes to their education of teachers, ensuring their capability as they enter the public school classroom. For their part, DepEd also recently launched the Matatag curriculum, which reduced the subjects and competencies from kindergarten to grade 3 to allow students to focus better. However, the agency says the impact of this change may only be felt in the 2028 PISA assessment.
So, yung Matatag curriculum, nakapilot lang siya ngayon sa iilang schools, but next year pa natin i-implement yung nationwide. Honestly, we have to be straight in saying na it will really take time for reforms.
House Deputy Minority Leader and ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro likewise expressed concern over Filipino students' poor performance in the latest PISA, attributing it to the language barrier. She highlighted the challenges of English as the main medium of instruction in the Philippines, saying this is a big impediment to student learning because they have to master English first before they can learn science and math concepts. But the question remains, what should be the first step in addressing this education issue in the country? Let's discuss that further on today's agenda.
Diane Fajardo is the Deputy Executive Director of Philippine Business for Education, an education advocacy group led by some of the country's top business leaders. Prior to this, Fajardo worked at the United Nations Environment Program as a research consultant. Fajardo obtained her master's degree in public policy from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy in Singapore.
Good morning, Diane. Thank you for being with us this morning on Agenda. We just had you on last night's show as well, so thank you for staying late and then waking up early for One News.
Good morning.
Okay, so we're still talking about education. This PISA 2022 rankings is, of course, a big story and also very, very important. I just had a very long discussion with DepEd Assistant Secretary Francis Bringas about the problems, the issues on the ground, what they're doing moving forward. And there's a lot to react to. So the first thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is overall, what did PBEd make of the Philippines' performance in the PISA 2022 ranking?
So we're not surprised, but we're still very alarmed. I actually, years ago, we've sounded the alarm on the learning crisis. Before we're calling it a learning crisis, but now I think we're really at a war. We're really at a war, no? Wherein our learners are the victims because because their future at stake here. If they don't know how to read, do even just simple math problems, their livelihood, their work, and the future of our economy is at stake here, and ultimately the quality of their lives is at stake here.
And actually, you're right, because almost no Filipino students aged 15 years old were in the top percentile in terms of mathematics, as I was pointing out to Asik Bringas, which worried me as a parent because, of course, math is, vital in this very digitalized world that we live in, right? When you say we went from crisis to war, do you then feel like we're regressing as a country?
I think there are certain wins. So, for example, we increased a little in some subjects, but overall, a large percentage of our learners are still below level 2 or the minimum level of proficiency expected from 15-year-olds. So we're winning some battles, but we're losing the war.
So there's small wins, pero it's almost like take one step forward, two steps back kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So again, average 2022 results, which were just released yesterday, were about the same as in 2018, the first year that we joined in across the board though. It's across mathematics, reading, and science. And then the gap between the highest scoring students and the weakest students narrowed slightly, but it still did not change significantly. Um, in mathematics, low achievers actually became stronger again slightly, while performance did not change significantly amongst high achievers. What does that tell you, specifically in terms of the performance?
Yeah. So as I've said, we're improving a little, but because the baseline is so low, so that it's
Mm,
relatively easier to improve or to get stronger. But as a country, as a set of learners, we're still lagging behind our neighbors. So for example, Vietnam, they're spending the same amount per student as the Philippines. But they're really ahead of us. So it's not really the budget, but it's really in the implementation and the other aspects of education governance.
that's interesting. Tell us more about the comparison with Vietnam. So it's not a. You don't think it's a budget problem?
Well, a portion of it is budget problem. Of course, there's always room for additional budget
Mm,
in the Department of in education in general, even though it's constitutionally mandated to have the biggest chunk of the
mm.
pie. But there are a lot of things that can be done in governance. So for example, we need to further devolve or decentralize, wherein more autonomy should be given to local leaders, school heads, division superintendents, and even local government units. This will also solve procurement problems, hiring problems, and contextualization and localization issues.
Procurement problems was the thing that ASEC Francis Bringas, whom I just spoke to, uh, that's what she pointed to as the problem with the school-based feeding program. Because last year, COA, the Commission on Audit, had flagged DepEd over delays in rolling out the school-based feeding program in some of the regions, some of them remote, like Oriental Mindoro, for instance, but other places, even like places like Makati, right? Uh, so based on PBEd studies, is that the real problem?
So this is
Procurement. Oh, sorry. Not she said it's not just the procurement, but also the uh the availability of the resources of the food that they need to buy. An example would be milk, for instance. COA flagged that the milk supply in some of these schools using the SBF, the school-based feeding program in Oriental Mindoro, was a month late. And she said it was because of the availability of the supply. So it was based on your study. Is that the main issue?
So this is just based on our consultations with stakeholders nationwide. So school heads are saying that they need to be more empowered and capacitated in terms of providing these services, because they're quite frustrated, because they can't they can't they can't decide on the urgency or the urgency of these issues. So, for example, if we devolve or decentralize procurement, we can go to local suppliers, or the procurement won't require a big amount of supply for milk. So there's sana na school-based or locally sourced yung mga feeding programs natin, and para then the farmers or also the parents of these students will also gain from it.
Yeah. Hindi kaya it might also create more of a mess if we decentralize and empower the local units and local schools with more budget, because it is coming from the national budget, therefore they need to account for every peso that, so baka naman it might inadvertently add more steps to the process, like you have to file a lot of paperwork to ensure accountability, to ensure transparency. Hindi kaya that might happen?
I think it depends on the rules. It's a matter of streamlining the process So aside from devolving it, it's also streamlining the process. I think this is not just a problem of the Department of Education, but a problem of the whole government, wherein we need to cut red tape.
So it really depends on them as well and how they roll out the system.
Yes.
What else do you think needs to be improved about the school-based feeding program, Diane? Because one thing that stood out for the Philippines is, of course, socioeconomically, we're different from all these countries that have ranked much higher. The basket that been put into is the same one that Singapore and Japan and Korea are in, and of course, they're much wealthier countries. They don't have socioeconomic problems the same way that we do, right? There's not school hunger is not a huge problem in those countries. So the DepEd seems to be trying as much as they can with the budget that they've been given with the school-based feeding program, for instance. But how else can we improve that?
So for school-based feeding program, I think we should also look at extending it to summer breaks, since a lot of students malnourished, or a lot of students who became normal weight during school days regress to being malnourished during summer because they don't have a source of meals. And at the same time, you should also look at the actual budget per student for the feeding program, because according to our consultations, students are taking the meals with them at home so that they can share it with their siblings and their family. So the meals are proportioned for one individual only, and when you share it, it defeats the purpose of giving them the nutrition that they need.
Wow, that's so sad to hear. That's just the reality of the Philippines, I guess. Yung inuuwi yung meals, the meals that are supposed to be for them. When you say that they regress during the summer when they're out of school, how does that mess up the system? How does that affect their learning abilities? Ano nangyayari sa kanila?
Yeah, so they can't. I mean, their brains are not developed properly, especially for K-6. No, even though they learned in the school and even though they learned in the school year and normal weight na sila, pagdating sa summer they become wasted, and there's also learning loss during summer break. So it's double whammy that we also need to address. So sayang lang kasi we've poured so much effort. We poured budget on school-based feeding program, but during summer breaks they will regress. But I think we should also look at it at a parent's perspective, or in an angle wherein we also need to empower parents, because it won't be sustainable if we just keep on providing free meals to students if their parents are unemployed, diba? So we should also wrap up our efforts in providing livelihood and jobs to parents and maybe their unemployed older siblings, so that they can also contribute to the household.
Yeah, because it needs to be a holistic approach, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because as like Francis Pringas was pointing out, at the moment, the school-based feeding program only covers about 120 days out of the school year. They're hoping to increase it to a little over 200 days, but of course, that might take a while. So what you're saying is it needs to cover the entirety of the child's life, basically, right? Look at livelihood for the parents, look at feeding them also outside of the school year, and also look at the siblings and the family dynamics.
Yeah, and this is where the local government units should come in. So education should also be a priority, and also an accountability of mayors and governors. Since so right now we have the special education fund. It's 1% of real property taxes. No? So it's not that much, but it can be tapped. Sana hindi lang sa mga paliga and like other extra.
Nice to have.
Nice to have. I mean, yeah, important. But there are, diba, nutrition is more fundamental than
Yeah.
than recreation. So yon, and at the same and as well as ito yung livelihood and health projects implementation. It's under the local government, so it should be tied together. Sadly, we have local school boards, but not all mayors are invested. So it depends. So the priority of education depends on the priority of the mayor. So if the mayor is invested in education, okay yung school board. But if education is not the priority of the mayor, more on infrastructure or maybe other sectors, so kawawa yung school board.
So it varies across the board as well. They're basically it comes down to the local politics din, no? So
Yes.
that's the difficulty with that. Diane, I'm gonna have to put you on hold for a bit because we do have to go to commercial break, but we will circle back to this conversation right after that. This is Agenda. Keep it here on One News. Stay with us. Welcome back to Agenda here on One News. Still with us this morning is PBEd Executive Director Diane Fajardo. Diane, let's continue our discussion. Before you, I was speaking to DepEd Assistant Secretary ASEC Francis Bringas, and we were talking at length about the understaffing problem in schools across the nation. They're very well aware of the problem. They're doing their best to try to resolve it. But you guys at PBEd speak to a lot of stakeholders on the ground. What are they saying about the understaffing?
Yeah, so so the understaffing in the schools is a function of both hiring and supply. So supply and demand. So for the supply side, we have a lot of teacher education students. Actually, I think we're teacher education is around top 2 or top 3 of CHED's most subscribed courses in college. We even have so we have a lot of teacher education students. Then around 1/3 or less than 40% of them passes the LEP. It's quite low, but still it's still, I think the LET passers are still enough for to fill the DepEd positions. However, the majors of these LET passers are the issues. So we can't fill DepEd positions because of their difference in major or their specialization. So in the ground, principals are saying that they need Filipino teachers, they need MAPE, they need civic education teachers, but most of our supply, they have majors like English, math, and science. I mean, it's not bad as a major, but there's a mismatch with the items that DepEd needs to fill. And at the same time, there is a localization law wherein wherein teachers should be a resident of either the barangay or the municipality or the province if there's no available applicant. So there's clearly a
May
job
red tape then.
even inside the Department of Education.
Well, that's interesting though. But so do you mean to say that technically speaking, we don't have a shortage of reading, math, and science teachers, at least locally?
Yes, but
Okay.
the quality of our of our teaching workforce is also, I mean, it should also be assessed. So there is a study by the Research Center for Teacher Quality of PNU back in 2017 or before the pandemic, and it says that teachers are performing the same way as their students, which is already low. So their
Oh,
competence
wow.
is the same as their student. So, diba, how can you teach if you don't know what to teach them?
Wow, that's shocking. Do we do any upskilling of these teachers as far as you know?
Yeah, so I think DepEd has this yearly upskilling of teachers. No, they have this seminar, but the teachers are saying that sometimes they get sent to these workshops and seminars just for the sake of it. No, it doesn't necessarily mean that they need that workshop or that's their specialization. So a lot of implementation issues, and sometimes it's sometimes, especially December, a lot of the workshops are being compressed to December so that they can finish their budget. So sayang lang because there is upskilling and professional development budget, but it should be streamlined and it should be targeted. I think the DepEd, the National Educators Academy of the Philippines, they're also trying their best to streamline these workshops, but of course we have 900,000 teachers, so it's really difficult to implement this. So hopefully by next year they can release the rules on a more targeted professional development programs.
And then lastly, Diane, what are you hoping to see in terms of short-term gains? Because again, as we like to keep saying, that this is a long battle ahead of us. In terms of short-term gains, off the back of this PISA 2022 rankings, which we performed dismally at, what needs to be done in the immediate term so we can at least try to make a little bit of headway?
So first, we need to strengthen our nutrition program. So we've talked about this, the feeding program, and not just school-based feeding program, but we should start from first 1,000 days to maybe grade 4, grade 6, because we need to invest early so that when we take the PISA, 2030, our learners are well nourished and they're not stunted. Second, we need to hire more teachers and guidance counselors. As seen in the PISA, we're number one in bullying and students feeling alone. So our students need to improve on their mental health so that they can perform better at school. Third, hopefully the EDCOM will act on the decentralization or devolution of the education system. It's a big reform. That's why we need legislation. But hopefully, within the next year and a half before the midterm elections, we can see some policy or some research on this.
Yeah. Tall order, but you know what? You're right. These are all very doable things. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Great insights. That was PBEd Executive Director Diane Fajardo.
Thank you, Regina.
And that's been today's agenda. Keep it here on Cignal TV channels 8 and 250 for the latest news. Sitting in for Cito Beltran. Again, I'm Regina Lay. We are One News, all sides, all the time.